The Trump administration has announced that there are going to be massive cuts to the Supplemental Nutritional Assistance Program, otherwise known as SNAP in the United States, otherwise known as food stamps. So there's going to be a massive cut in them. There's going to be a change in what qualifies a person to receive food stamps. And this will have an effect which the United States and several organizations have already determined will affect about 700,000 vulnerable Americans. In other words, Americans who are already having a great deal of difficulty trying to get by as it is and who need this program in order to be able to eat. Now, approximately 36 million people in the United States received the SNAP program assistance, which is a food program designed for low-income individuals, for those of you who aren't familiar with what SNAP is in the United States. This tends to be a big boost in the living standards of a lot of people in the U.S. who otherwise might be going very hungry. Now, many states have been able to apply for waivers so that these new rules don't count in order to, particularly with areas of a very high unemployment where you're very likely not to get a job anyway. So it's kind of hard to cut their food stamps for not having a job when there's already very, very high unemployment to begin with. If there's no job to be found, but then punish you for not having a job. Or maybe that's supposed to teach working class people a lesson about being a job creator. I don't know. But let's be honest. This is being cut so that less money can be spent on it to justify further tax cuts for the capitalist class in America. Particularly the so-called 1% of America, which already basically don't pay any taxes anyway. But that's what this is for, in order to justify charging less taxes by having less state expenditures, even if it is just going to make, 750,000 people go hungry. Basically, the rule is going to be that you have to work in order to get food stamps. So if you already can't afford food, you won't be able to receive food because you can't afford food. I'm sure there's some kind of logic in there somewhere, but let's face it, this is a punish the poor kind of thing in order to justify tax cuts. But there's something actually bigger than this I wanted to discuss with this. What is it going to take for the American people to revolt? And I don't mean necessarily violence or anything big like that, or a revolution. Maybe just general social unrest. Already, if you look at much of the middle America, the very Republican, conservative farmer types, stereotype, that hate anything leftist or liberal, who've been just railed by Trump. And many of them driven off their land, destroyed by his trade war with China, etc. And then all the people that have been impoverished because of this, and then now cutting food for 700,000 people, and probably going to make it more difficult for people who probably still qualify. When is enough enough? I mean, look at France. They want to make a change in the retirement thing, and they've had this complete destruction for how many months has it been going on for now? Maybe almost a year? But the people in the U.S. are still just taking that, and they believe that, if they vote the Bernie Sanders, who isn't going to be allowed to win. So who knows what he would do if he did win. I think it's a moot point, considering that he won't be allowed to win. But when are they finally going to do something? If there's anything I've ever wondered about America is that their continued desire to do things against their own interests. And this is I'm talking primarily the right-wing Americans who undermine themselves. And then there's the very left-wing Americans who don't really do anything significant against it. And the question I'm thinking is, what does it take? What does it take for Americans to finally, stand up to this? How much social unrest does there have to be? I mean, you can have alt-rightists go out and, do a bunch of shootings, and then people will come up and massively protest it. But then they don't do it on as big a scale when there's these kind of cuts going on. I mean, there was a big protest movement after Trump was elected and got, I don't know, was his reception worse than what George Bush got? Remember when George Bush was doing that trip to the White House, he was getting all kinds of shit thrown at his car, vegetables, blah blah blah, debris, etc. So it's debatable who got a worse reception, Trump or Bush in that regard. Bush Jr. I should say. But really asks an important question: when is enough enough? I mean, I know there's a significant amount of first world privilege here, and first world people are comfortable enough that they won't do a revolution. But there's got to be a protest movement at some point. There's got to be, if not a revolution, then mass unrest as a result of this. Like, you can understand why when, a young black man is killed and then black Americans come take to the streets and start rioting and looting. Okay, yeah, that's a response to an injustice that's been happening. But when you do something like this, that's going to affect all Americans, not just black Americans, and obviously, disproportionately, it is going to affect black Americans. But something like this that's going to affect, Americans of basically every color, and of course the lower class Americans. I mean, you don't tend to put food stamps on rich people. And still, you don't get that mass outrage. And I keep returning to that question: what's it going to take? I mean, it's not like I oppose Americans protesting this or doing something about it or having some kind of rebellion. I mean, they should. I mean, if literally going hungry isn't enough to do it, what's it going to take? There should come a point where the American people, despite being privileged for being in the first world, have to start rebelling at some point, because if you think this is where they're going to draw the line, the ruling class is going to draw the line, I'm sorry, but you're a bit foolish. They're going to keep pushing this, and they're going to keep pushing it further and further and further as far as they can until enough of an unrest happens that maybe even Rome begins to fall. So there's got to be a point when this stops. And again, I'm left wondering, what's it going to take for Americans to begin to revolt? Thank you for watching. If you like this program, then please head over to my Patreon page and set up a monthly donation. It's your donations that keep this program running. Also, if you would like, please rate, comment, subscribe, and share in various social media.